All right, I am really excited to have Coach Kenny Simpson on tonight. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and where you're at and stuff.
Sure. Coach, thanks for having me. Always good to talk football and appreciate what you're doing. Doing this takes time. And so I know a lot of guys appreciate the material you're working to put out. For those who may not know me, I coach high school football in Arkansas. I've been doing it for a long time and started kind of producing coaches' materials. I'm sure we'll talk about some of those, so I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but basically, I'm still a football coach, coaches high school level in the state of Arkansas. I've worked for as a head coach of probably, I don't know, probably three different schools, four different schools now. And so I have a lot of experience and learned some things that didn't work and some things that do work. And I think a lot of guys probably know me for the materials that we try to put out to help other coaches.
Yep. Yeah, because so speaking of that, you have a new book with formations, and I love your saying, and I really did a deep dive into that myself and kind of looked at stuff. But you have one about formations. This is actually, I think, your second volume, right, with formations.
Third one. Yeah,
Third
actually,
one,
the third
yeah.
one.
So, but the saying is, if guys that don't know it, is formations are cheap, plays are expensive. So I'll let you kind of talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's an old coach. I stole that from a guy who probably stole it from a guy who stole it from a guy. But essentially, the idea would be that, installing a concept takes time, to be really good at whatever you want to do, whether that's a passing concept or a running concept or whatever that might be. To become an expert at something like that takes a lot of time, a lot of resources. It's something you got to spend a lot of time doing. Formations should be something you use to help that concept. And so, for me, the way we try to teach our offense or defense is that we can run formation once we learn the rules, kind of like basketball. When you learn rules, general rules, if I'm lined up over here, this is my rule. If I'm lined up over there, this is my rule. And now we can run essentially the same play, but run it from basically a multitude of different formations. And so those three books are kind of in that mindset. They show the formations that we like, and then they show advantages, of the formation, and then plays that we would like to run out of those. And so obviously some formations are more beneficial for certain play concepts. But the idea being you should be able to run your full offense with small tweaks to your formation and really make it difficult on a defense.
Yeah, I'm. So can I ask you, because you probably do a little crunch number, how many different formations do you average a game about?
If the game is going well, probably in that 10 to 15.
Okay.
If we're struggling or the team is maybe superior to us talent wise, which we had two or three of those this year, that may go up to 50. And we may run
Oh,
a new
wow.
formation just to try to, it's kind of like a pitcher. You got to think like a pitcher. If you're striking them out throwing a fastball, don't stop throwing a fastball. Keep throwing that. But when they catch on to that, what's your changeup? What's your curveball? What's your same idea with formations in my mind is, if we can find a formation that we're gaining an advantage and having success with,
Hmm.
then obviously we're going to stay in that formation. If we're struggling, then we want to have multiple options we can kind of fall back to. But short answer to your question, I would say anywhere from 10 to 20 is probably a typical game. But there's been some where, we've needed every bit of 40, 50 formations.
Wow, that's a lot. That's also a lot of plays.
It is, we try to
Yeah.
average about 70 plays a game. So I'll give you kind of an idea.
Yeah. So with formations, then what's kind of like your base plays that you use in your offense?
Yeah, if guys don't know, we run what we call the gun tee offense, which is basically a hybrid of the shotgun wing tee, the power spread RPO game, and then of course the spread world. And so most people would call that either 12 personnel or 21 personnel, where we're going to have a tight end and an attached wing or H-back, and then we're going to have two receivers as well as a quarterback and a running back. And so we base our offense off of the wing tee run game. So buck sweep, We're going to run the double handoff off of that. And then we mix in the RPOs and the same play actions a wing T would have, waggle, passes off of buck sweep look. And so that's really where our offense kind of essentially comes from. So that formation becomes kind of our base, the first one we would install. And
Mhm.
then we have words that will talk to each player. So we can move any of our skill players wherever on the field and get into all these unique looking formations. And so that's where a lot of these books came from. There's actually three of them. One of them is just 98 shotgun wing, which is a lot of what we run.
Yep.
Then we have a whole unbalanced book. We got into a lot of unbalanced tackle over, nub tight end type looks the last couple of years. So there's a whole book kind of dedicated to that. And then this one is more, we kind of explored more this offseason of going more three wide receiver, more spreadish looking, some more 20 personnel type
Mhm.
stuff. And so that's what this book kind of delves into is, what we would look for in those.
Can I ask you a couple questions, or maybe just say maybe your top two or three reasons why, and what's important to you when you're using changing formations, what you're kind of looking for from the defense?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because to me, you don't just run formations for no reason. So, obviously, if you're running a formation, you're trying to gain some advantage. And so that can be one of a couple ways. It could be just a simple numbers advantage where we're trying to get the defense outnumbered in the passing game. That might be like running trips where you're getting kind of a 2 over 3 where you can throw the ball out there and just take easy yards.
Mhm.
In the running game, it could be that tight end wing, and they're not matching personnel, so you can have a +1 in the run game. Or a lot of times, we're trying to create advantages for players, where it might be in the passing game, it may be creating a one-on-one with our good athlete versus their linebacker, or in the running game, that may be where we're going to shift and move around a little bit and make your corner kind of come down and play run fit. And so there's a lot of reasons to do it, but mainly we're looking for numbers or we're looking for some kind of personnel type advantage.
Um, Next, I well, we kind of talked about this. I want to talk about your organizational guide. Maybe can you just talk about a little bit what's in there? Like, like for me, like, guys always are asking for call sheets. You break down how you set up your call sheet in there. Kind of, you talk about pods and your practices. Maybe you want can we start with that? Maybe a couple of those
Sure. Yeah.
topics.
So one of the things we started doing, and I know you probably are, if you're putting out materials, you kind of know how this works, is that you're trying to help guys. So you're trying to come up with materials that can be used by anybody and taken any way they want to take them. And so we started coming up with a lot of these organizational type materials. So we have my office, we have the Gun T organizational guide. Then we have a defensive one, a 3-4 organizational guide. And then we have a lot of these just downloadable materials. And they're all over at my website. It's fbcoachsimpson.com. So guys can go over there and, some are free, some are a little bit of money. And of course, the books are a little bit more because you got to print them and ship them. But essentially, the goal was for me was a coach could get on my site and find an example of a call sheet, and they could take that and tweak it to fit their needs. They could find sample practice schedules and tweak it to fit their needs. A coach's manual, how we're going to break down responsibilities of coaches. And again, you take it and change it for what you need is kind of the goal is any material we have over there. So we have a head coach workbook, we have an offensive coordinator workbook, and then we have a defensive coordinator workbook. They're all over there. Essentially, they're templates. They kind of show an example. And then there's a template where you as the coach put in how you want to use that and how you want to make that effective. Because we all know in the middle of the season, we're trying to be as organized as we can to maximize our time. And so we put a lot of those materials over there. That's all over at fbcoachsimpson.com in the materials section. And I encourage you to go over there. Like I mentioned, if you just want free stuff, we have that over there. If not, then there's other materials also.
Yeah, you are always if guys that are on Facebook, if you're in the groups, any of his groups, he'll share, be like, this stuff's free this week. There's also specials. You can get on his email list too, and then you get the emails to notify you what's going on with the latest news too. So, now this word pods, I never knew until I started reading your stuff what a pod actually is for football. You want to talk
So
about what pods are?
yeah, and for me, I mean, other guys probably had different words they use. You know, nothing is new in football. It's just how we organize it and how we structure it and how we make things happen. So a couple of years ago, we were trying to figure out ways to make our practices more efficient, ways to make them a little bit better. And so we had, you know, everybody has individual time and everybody has group time and everybody has team time. That's been
Mm-hmm.
around all for a long, long time. But we
Mm-hmm.
had this kind of random time in the middle where we thought, well, we need to start kind of putting people that work together for certain concepts. You know, for us on offense, a lot of times our guards and our running backs are linked because we run a whole lot of where they're pulling out in front of our running back.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't normally would go together. And so same thing on defense. We would have like our outside linebackers and safeties, we want them to work a run fit together. They're not the same position, but they need to work together. And so we started just calling that pod time. Essentially,
Okay.
it was groupings of people that have different position coaches that need to come together for like a concept you're working on. So the most common one that people probably know of, we run buck sweep a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, in that pod, we would take our tight end and our wing and our tackle because they're all going to be working gap down backer. They're all going to work down blocks. So they would be one part of the pod. Our guards, running backs, and quarterbacks would be another part of the pod. Our quick tackle, or the tackle away from the down block, would be working oftentimes with our receivers because a lot of times we'll work screen game or RPO game where he's involved with them. And so you have this random grouping where you have a tackle going with the receivers, you have guards going with the running backs, and you have tight ends and wings going with the tackle. You kind of have this random grouping. So to just give it a name and make it organized, we just called it a pod. And then we started doing it on defense, you know, where we would work safeties and outside linebackers are working run fit. We do a lot where the safety has to fit off of the outside linebacker. And so that's not a normal group. So you're working a drill there where they're working how they're going to fit it. We may have like our outside linebackers go work with our defensive linemen to work on playing a nine technique. So anytime we have groupings of people that don't normally work together, we just kind of call that a pod. And then those guys know, hey, you're going to go with this coach and we're going to work this concept.
Yeah, now that makes a lot more sense to me. So I'm glad you explained that. And that really makes sense in offenses when you don't, like you said, to have a separate time between maybe indie and team to have a pot in there depending on your offense,
Right.
that might need to do something like that. Like for us, we just sometimes bring the tight end over with the lineman, and then the other times he's over there with the wide receivers. Well, if you had a little bit of pod time, you'd be able to do that, so he's not missing time between the drills. You could just,
Right.
so that makes a lot of sense. I was just gonna, I don't know, because how many coaches do you actually have on your staff? And I know like your organizational book does a great job explaining, how to apply your offense into how many coaches you have.
Right. Yeah. We're blessed at Southside. We have 7 coaches on our staff, but we only have really about 5 that work with our offense. I've got 2 guys that I only want to focus on defense. So we have those guys just do defense, and then my O-line coach and myself really mainly only work offense.
Okay.
So we work with 5 coaches on each side of the ball. But like you said, I've been at staffs before where we've had 12 coaches.
Hmm.
And I've been on staffs where we've had 4 coaches. And so I think as a coach, you've always got to constantly be thinking, how are we going to maximize our time? And so you brought up pods, but one of the reasons we came to that was because we had coaches that had specific skills. Like, you know, if we're going to teach anything that involves blocking,
Hmm.
our line coach is probably going to be involved with that. If we're going to teach anything that involves blocking at like a second level, so like going to a linebacker or whatever that might be pulling, our running back coach actually works with those guys. If we're going to work anything that's blocking outside the tackle box, our receiver coach would work with them. So theoretically, you may have a lineman who works with the line coach, the running back coach, and the receiver coach in a given week of practice. And you may have a tight end, you mentioned tight ends, who may work with a line, the receivers, and the running back coach, because again, they got to perform all of those types of blocks. And so that's one way we've tried to fix it. So if you're kind of listening to this and you're thinking, well, coach, I wish I had that many coaches, try to break it down more on the skill set. Like if a ball is being caught, our receiver coach works with them. If it's anybody working ball security running, our running back coach. And so just kind of think about the skill set. And then when you design your practice, design it more that way. Instead of saying you're the running back coach, you got to teach them all these skills. You're the guy in charge of teaching anybody who's going to run the ball these skills. And so your players now may go from one coach to another coach to another coach, but they're getting the skill set they need. And we do the same thing on defense. And so I think that's one way we've kind of maximized our time a little bit better, and it really does help on smaller staffs.
Absolutely. When I was out in California, we had 3 of us for varsity. In Minnesota, we had 9 of us on varsity. So it was nice for me as a volunteer to be able to be with around 9 coaches because I didn't have to do a lot of hands-on stuff. But I really got to sit back and learn and take a whole bunch of notes during that time because I was like the assistant line coach of the assistant line coach.
Right.
So, it's nice to be able to, if you're learning to be on bigger staffs, if you're a volunteer learning coach, it's nice to be on bigger staffs because there's a lot more stuff you can just sit back and kind of learn and not have to be so much a part of. Everyday drills. So talking with pods and stuff, do you have like a set of everyday drills? And is that like position specific? Or what's that like for your offense to make it successful?
Yeah, I think we have, I don't know if everyday drills is right, but I would say we probably have drills that we would do almost every day. Like linemen in our offense are probably going to do some version of down block. If they're not doing it every day, 99% of the time. I mean, pretty
Yeah.
close. Our receivers are probably going to go through whatever footwork. He kind of has a menu of here's the 2 or 3 drills he's going to rotate through
Okay.
that are working those skills. Or same thing with like a ball drill. He's probably going to have a menu of drills
Mm-hmm.
that he's going to go through. And so that's what I would encourage guys to come up with is these are the things we need the most, the next most, the next most, and then we're going to go ahead and have kind of maybe a menu of these are the 4 drills I'm going to rotate through.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way we're working the same skill, but it may not be the exact same drill every day. Now we do have some drills that we run, I think almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
But we do try to cycle through so they've got a little bit of a variety and a little bit that might focus on a different portion of the skill set that needs to be taught.
Yeah, I like that menu thing because that also turns you back to our or with our offense. Um, Basically, when I was looking at our offense, you used the word recipe, and I liked how you and it made me kind of like grade your plays. Like for us versus an even front and a non front, our better, good, better, best plays aren't the same. And so that I learned from you. So maybe can you touch on that about how you kind of grade your plays and how you know what ones work better? Because I
Yeah,
learned
I
that
mean,
from you.
sure. Well, I think it's different for each offense. You got to kind of look at what offense you run, and so we really start off before we even get into looking at different fronts. We start off with worst case scenario, and so we kind of go
Okay.
through like what would be the thing that would scare us the most running our offense if we saw these 1 or 2 things, and so we kind of start our offense from there because there are certain fronts that are going to make you run a different looking offense. I mean, you think about any offense that sees man zero or man press, it's probably they need to have some kind of answers. So you need to think about what does that do to our offense? What does it do to our offense if we're seeing multiple blitzes or we're seeing uh, 9 guys in the box or whatever that might be? What are we going to do to those things? And so you kind of look at here's our 2 or 3 things that we better have answers for. Because I mean, if you coach offense long enough, if somebody stops you, you're going to see that again. Like that's going to come out next week and next week and next week. until you prove, no, we have answers for this. So we
Mhm.
kind of start there. We start with, okay, here's worst case, and we're going to work that every week. Maybe it's just one day a week, but we're going to work that look every week to make sure we feel comfortable with our answers. And then, like you said, there's basically two types of fronts in defense. There's an odd front and there's an even front. And certain runs usually work better against certain defenses. It doesn't mean you can't run
Correct.
your offense against a certain look,
Yep.
but generally, odd front teams, are going to, and our offense are going to slant to the tight end wing.
Yep.
So that creates advantage to run back to the backside.
Hmm.
Even front teams tend to be more gap oriented.
Yep.
So that creates an advantage to the strong side. So it's not a guarantee, but you kind of look at your offense and go, okay, these are the two major fronts we're going to see. If we see these, what is a natural advantage against this front and against that front?
Hmm.
It could be as simple as if we see a four front team and they're going to play their defensive end, head up our tight end, we need to run outside. Or if they're going to play him outside our tight end, we need to be able to run the ball inside of the tight end. I mean, it could be that simple.
Yep.
The same thing works with coverages. Like I've already mentioned man zero, but you probably have two high cover two routes you like, and you probably have cover three like, routes that you like. And so to me, it's just having that, like you said, we call it menu, you call it recipe, whatever that is. Here's our things that we like against these looks.
Hmm.
And then here's the things we feel so comfortable with. We don't care what look you give us.
Hmm.
We feel like we can run this against anything. And so
Yep.
you need to kind of have that in your little bag of tricks is we think we can run this when we don't know what we're getting.
Hmm.
And then these are the plays we like if we get these looks.
Hmm. Well, I think with that, I think that'll probably lead us into our next part that I had was, because I also learned this from you and I incorporated it in our offense because I thought it made sense to me was if and then.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to me, when you're calling plays, especially run plays, you can do it with anything, but we'll just kind of stick with the run play tonight.
Yes.
But if we're running the ball and this is the issue, and so if you're going to run the ball, let's say it doesn't really matter what concept you're running, but let's say you're running outside zone, okay, and you're being tackled by the backside, whatever guy that is. What's your answer for that? And so you've got to, because the answers we're going to go to, if this guy makes a to tackle, we can run a counter. We can read him with like an RPO. Maybe we can screen him. And
Hmm.
so what are our answers for if these problems arise? And in my opinion, you need to have that for every single play you run. If this play is stopped by this, that, or the other,
Hmm.
how are we going to do that? And we think there's three ways you can do that. Number one, you can read it. That's where the RPO game has kind of become big.
Hmm.
Number two, you can adjust blocking or adjust formations. So there's kind of an either or there. I can
Hmm.
formation the problem out, or I can adjust my blocking to take care of it. And then the final thing you can do is obviously play action. If you're getting a conflict guy who's supposed to play run and pass, but he's playing the run, then play action is probably your answer. So you kind of have these different things we can do. And in my opinion, you need to have them that specifically pick on specific defensive players. I need to know from the box, the strong safety made the tackle, knowing that, what am I going to go to next?
Hmm.
And that makes calling plays a lot easier.
Sure does, and it helps you be organized. So,
Right.
um, I wanted to, okay, so yeah, the next one, the evolution of your offense, because I know when you started this, and then now like you said, you've added more RPOs. What's been like the evolution of your offense? What's like some things that you're like, oh, this made sense. We got to add it. What are some of those things?
Yeah. So we started running the gun T or the flavor of offense we're running now around 2015. So that was almost 9 years ago now. So since that's happened, of course, defenses start to catch on. And so you always, I think, no matter what offense you run, you need to always be constantly evolving because defenses are doing the same thing. So
Mhm.
you got to have something. You don't have to have a whole new thing, but it needs to be a tweak or an adjustment or whatever you're going to do. I would say if you watched us play football in 2015, 2016, 2017, we were first kind of learning this offense. We were probably a lot more vanilla would be the word I would use. Like we worked hard to be really good at buck sweep. We had a lot of our base RPOs. We had our base run plays. We had our base pass plays. That stuff really hasn't changed. Like that, the base of the offense really has not changed. Where we have gotten better is we now are able to use formations as much more of a weapon. Specifically, the last 2 or 3 years, we've gotten to where we can not only use a formation, but we can shift from this formation to that formation. We can run an unbalanced look. We can give an empty look. We can run the same RPOs from different looks to different people. And so the RPO didn't change, but the guy we're throwing the ball to is a different guy. And so basically, you just got to answer what the defense is taking away because defenses are going to see what you did last year and they're going to try to take some of that stuff away. And so I would say formations, our RPO game has grown tremendously. But really, we've not added things into our offense. We've simply made what we were already running more multiple. And I think, again, that's from using formations as an advantage and then also figuring out different ways to read different defenders in the RPO game. And then we've made some tweaks in our play action game. We've kind of figured out, okay, this play action seems to be better for us, or this little tweak is better for us. And honestly, I think every offense needs to do that each year, whether you win a state championship or you go 0-10. I think you need to figure out what is your base, what are you going to live with, and then what are the things that you can do to make that better.
Yeah, so with that, one of the questions I was talking to you about, because I know your offense is so RPO based. Do you have pre-snap? Are they pre-snap RPOs? Are they post-snap RPOs? How do you incorporate RPOs into your offense?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you can do it. Like, I don't really know if it's truly an RPO, if it's a pre-snap read, but it's a good thing to have. I'm not suggesting you don't need it, but there are really three types of that world type plays. I think you can have like you mentioned, pre-snap, where we can throw it like a screen or a route concept, or we can decide to run the run play. So we
Mm-hmm.
have those. I think every offense at this point probably has something in that world if you're in the shotgun at all. And even if you're under center, you may even look out there and see what you want to take.
Yep.
Then I think you've got like the run. A lot of teams, we are the same way, are going to athletic quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
They're just they're basically a cheat code, at all levels. So you have what we would call run options. So I can hand it or I can pull it and run it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got several of those,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the type of quarterback we have. Then we have the post snap RPO where I'm either going to give the ball off or I'm going to throw the ball into these different areas of the field. Um, and we can throw it to different guys in those areas. As you kind of work up the RPO ladder,
Mm-hmm.
it's more difficult. So first one where I can throw it or give it, but I know the decision before we snap the ball. I think you could do that, at the junior high level. Seventh, eighth graders, if you teach them right, should be able to do that. As you kind of get into the run, that's a low risk type play. It's a low reward type play. And as you get into the next one, I don't think it's super difficult, but it is more difficult. There's more risk involved.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to spend more time on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, we run all of them. But some years, depending on our quarterback, we may only run the first two, as he kind of progresses towards where we want him to be.
Mm-hmm. Um, let's see. Okay. Well, before we talk about that, talk about some of your books now. I want to, because you talked about youth. Guys, there is a youth book. I don't have it because I don't deal with the youth coaches, but what kind of is that? What's kind of in there for the youth coaches?
Yeah, I coach the high school level, but I work with our youth coaches. And so there was obviously a need there for, hey, coach, we want to run what you run, but I'm working with 8-year-olds,
Yeah.
10-year-olds, 12, whatever that might be. And you don't want to be running too much and just freak those kids out. And so We tried to come up with, we have two youth books for the gun tee, and we have one for the defense, the 3-4 book. And basically what they are is, here's the basis of the offense. And then here's what we would suggest as you progress. Like, here's what you might want to look at having this, do this first. And if they can master this, progress up to this. And so we kind of give suggestions in there. And then we have a drill book for youth as well that kind of
Oh,
goes through, here's the main drills we would run for, basically seventh grade and under. Like, these are the drills for running backs, linemen, quarterbacks. And so it's kind of a conglomeration of all the other gun tee books, but it's shrunk down to try to fit, the youth level.
yeah. One book that I don't have because I'm not a head coach, but I know a lot of youth coaches probably need this book, and a lot of head coaches need this book. But what's one of the main concepts or two concepts out of your fundraising book that you have?
Oh yeah, yeah. Fundraising been big for us. We were very blessed here. I broke cut my teeth as a head coach at a private school. So basically, you had to learn how to handle a budget and fundraise. And so when I got into a public school, came over to Southside, and we had a grass field. Just didn't have the facilities we needed. Superintendent was very, very much a forward-thinking guy. We don't have the money, but he was willing to allow me to go and work to raise the money. And so we've raised about 2.1 million so far in the last 10 years. And then we're looking at potentially raising another significant chunk here in the next coming years. So all I did in the fundraising book was I kind of documented how we did this. And so we talk about, one of the chapters is big money comes from big companies. And so it talks about, if you're going to do a big fundraiser, here's how we would do it. And it's not just how we would, here's how we did.
Hmm.
Here's how we organized ours. Here's some of the things that we did to help it. Here's some suggestions for you. Then we have chapters about, like, your everyday, your kind of year to year. You got to raise money for jerseys, or you got to raise money for whatever it might be, a small campaign. Here's the 3 or 4 fundraisers we run to take care of that stuff. And then it gives you kind of some, don't do these type things, and then basically walks you through, these are the most lucrative type fundraisers that you can run. And so we want it to be very practical. So it's literally, these are the fundraisers that we run, and we show examples of it, and then we kind of talk about it.
Yeah, that's great because that's anybody that's got a youth or a head coach obviously has to do some kind of fundraising to help pay for stuff. So that's
Right.
such a great book. Um, Before we go on to I wanted to talk about, you did already talk about the academies. So I'll talk about your position manuals. I have the offensive line one because believe it or not, as small as I am a huge O line guy. Love the O line. But and then your newest one, I think, is the quarterback manual. You have a
Yeah.
wide receiver. So can you want to talk about those a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we started putting out materials a while back. And then as we did, we had more and more coaches kind of reach out to, hey, coach, what would you do in the world of this position? And so you've read the O-line book. So I went to our position coaches, said, okay, here's what I want. I want something that a guy can get, whether they run our offense or don't, and will be practical. It needs to focus on what we run, because that's what we know,
Yes.
but something you could use, whether you run our offense or you run something different. And so the offensive line one, my O-line coach actually helped me do it. He did a great job with it. So we have a
Mm-hmm.
drill book as well. So it will actually QR code to the drills, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Then we did a quarterback manual, which goes through, basically, here's how we teach our quarterbacks. Here's the drills that we run. Here's the routes we look. Here's where his eyes go. Here's how we choose quarterbacks and how we modify depending on the type of quarterback we have.
Mm-hmm.
We do the same with our receiver one. So half the book's drills, half the book is modifying to what you have, and then of course the concepts that we run. They are meant for people that run the gun tee. However, we feel like they provide value even if you're going to run something different. And we have a defensive line one as well in that
Okay.
same world. And basically, what I did was my position coaches that I've had, they do such a good job. Sat down with them and wanted to kind of get, hey, if you were going to give this to a guy who's taking your place, what would you put in here? And so
Gotcha.
they all came out really good. I was excited about them.
Yeah, like I said, guys, I'm not gun T. I'm gun spread option, but I love hosting these because I love learning stuff. I've bought in many of Kenny's books. I think I have 7 of them,
Oh,
and they all cross over in our offense too, because if you're running quick trap or counter, he's got belly, he's got counter, he's got buck. It's you want to learn how to pull from some of the best coaches. You got your offense is based on pulling, ours isn't. But hey, if I want to pull, I want to know the drills and how to do it from a guy that probably does it 20 times a game and we run it 2 times a game. I want those 2 plays to be perfect. So it does, all his stuff does cross over. One thing we talked about is your cruise, and it's such an awesome idea. Could you just tell Coach about what your cruise is like and what it's about and what they can expect?
sure. Yeah. So we probably back in 20, I don't know, 2018, 2019, before COVID hit and all this other stuff for my life kind of went crazy, I was running my own clinics, we got the idea. Um, I go to coaches' clinics. I've gone to them since I was first year coach. I think that's the way you learn, and it's a great way to do things. But every time you would do that, you leave your family behind, you leave your wife behind, you go out and you're spending money, and so it's good. It's a good thing, but you kind of felt like I'm already away from my family so much with football. Do I really need to have another 3 weekends where I'm on the road and out? So the idea became, can we find something that would work be a great coach's clinic, but a place where you could bring your wife, she could connect with other coaches' wives while you did the clinic part, and then you could spend some time and enjoy yourself. And so my mom is a travel agent, said, well, actually the best thing for that might be a cruise. And I kind of laughed. I said, well, I don't know how that's going to go. She said, well, think about a cruise. It's all you can eat. There's free child care. So for those that have children, there's free child care available. She said, and you can get space. Like they'll let you get a room on the ship where you could do your clinic during the morning. And then you would have the rest of the day where you could enjoy the ship, or if you're going to an island, could enjoy the island. And so we started it back in 2018 and 2019, had a ton of people come. 2020, obviously, the world kind of shut down on us. So we didn't do it for 2 years there.
Okay.
2022, we did it. In 2023, we did another one. I think we picked it up back up in 2023, maybe. Had a decent little crowd. And then we're doing one in May, which is going to be a 7 day. And then we actually have one coming up in January of 2025. And right now, there's, I think, right at 50 coaches
Oh
signed up
wow.
for that one. So we're running low on space, which is a great thing. And
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I was able to connect. Basically, the way we work it is no one, a lot of times when I'm doing a clinic, you're going to pay a speaker, you're going to pay, well, to make these happen, to keep the price as low as possible, whoever shows up on the cruise and is willing has been doing sessions. And so I was blessed on
Okay.
this one. I think Adam Harvey's coming. He's going to do a session for defense. Tyler Manis is coming. He's going to do a session for defense. And so we got a couple other speakers that I think are coming. I'm just working with them on doing a session. I'll do a couple sessions as well. So we think it's going to be a valuable clinic. And then my wife kind of handles what they do. It's been
Mhm.
really, really, I think the wives have more fun than the coaches do. And so it's been a cool deal. And our kids, there's a ton of kids. This one, kids are free.
Oh
So you
wow.
talk about a good place to go. So excited about it.
Absolutely.
It's been a great place to connect. I've got to meet some people from, Indiana and California, New Mexico, and they could fly in and then we go hang out for, however many days the cruise is and create a lot of good memories. And it's been a really, really neat event. This one, we have couples from all the way from California to up in Massachusetts, I think, are coming to the cruise. And so it's going to be a really fun deal.
Yeah, that would be what a great way, special place to talk football
Right.
and enjoy yourself. Um, Anything before I go to the last thing, talk about defense to wrap it up. Anything new going on that you got coming out, or anything new for coaches to look for?
Yeah, I mean, I try to always have stuff coming out. We have an O-line academy that's going to be out in about a month. And
Okay.
so in about a month, probably right at the beginning of June, We're still working to put it together. You know, we have the offensive coordinator academy
Yep, I have
and the
that.
defensive coordinator academy. And so you've got those that are already out,
Hmm.
and we're constantly adding materials to them. So if you're an OC or aspire to be one, you can go to offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, or the same for defense, defensivecoordinatoracademy.com. And there already are academies set up there where we provide a workbook, we bring in all these experts. It's not a specific offense or a specific defense. It's more of a these are the best of the best, kind of teaching you what you need to know to put your own offense together, or to put your own. So it's a very different type material, instead of you going and learning from a guy who's running the wishbone or running whatever. We're more concerned with learning how to be organized and learning how to work with your personnel and learning how to, because we think it's more of a teach a man to fish type deal.
Hmm.
So those are already out. We have the Offensive Line Academy coming out
Hmm.
soon. And then I've got the coaches cap. So I didn't bring one of those with me, but basically I'm a big advocate. You probably can't see real close to my face on the screen here, but if you could, I get this spot burned off and cut off about uh, basically 3 times a year, because I didn't take good care of my skin, and so because of that, I got into kind of trying to create awareness about coaches. Hey, be careful being out in the sun, because you don't want. It's scary when you hear the word cancer, you know, so you don't want that to be brought up, and so we created a bucket hat that's got UV protection. And then I always forget my whistle. So we created an attachment on the bottom of the hat. So you never forget your whistle, you never forget your hat. And it's been good for me. So I'm hoping to be good for other people. It's uh, coaches, COACHS CAP.com. I've got a bunch in my garage. It's my
Okay.
first ever patent. You have to order like 1 million of them from China if you're going to do something like that. But I was passionate enough about it. I don't really care if we make any money. I want to make sure coaches are taking care of themselves.
Yeah, I think they're really cool. When I saw that, I'm like, what a neat idea. So, the last thing that, and me and you talked about this earlier, so I know we can talk about it a little bit. That I said I got a little bit of golf from, but I'm a firm believer that any defense can stop any offense. And obviously, you've ran your 3-4 swarm defense, right? And it hasn't switched, and you don't switch it, and you stop, and you use it to try to stop every offense that comes against you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the chicken or the egg argument. You know, you could say that every offense could stop every defense could stop every offense, or every offense could beat every defense. I mean, it's one of those deals
Yep.
where I think it's how well do you teach what you do, you know, and obviously there's modifications. Like we run the 3-4, and the major reason we run the 3-4 is we're trying to get as much speed on the field as possible, because where we are, we see predominantly that better teams run some version of spread or some version of, you know, 3 or 4 wide receivers. And so we got to get guys out there that can run. We also will see the full house backfield. And so we, we've got to have adjustments that allow us to line up to that. Now, obviously, there might be some things we want to tweak week to week, or personnel things we might tweak week to week, but we don't want to run a whole different defense each week. And so I think to us, we run what we call a 3-4 swarm. And so it's just a 3-4 defense that's built on attacking and built on being simple. We run basically 2 read coverage behind it. And so we've got some tweaks that are built within it. And so to kind of answer your question, we feel like if we teach it well, we can at least line up correctly and give our kids a chance against anything we might see. Because we go into games where all of a sudden the offense is running 5 wide, and the next play they're in 2 tight. And the next play, you know, we see a lot of those multiple type offenses. Well, our kids need to have built-in rules so we can line up to them. So long answer, I guess, to what you're saying is, yeah, I think you can stop every offense. I don't know if every defense is optimally built for every type of offense. And I think like if team's running full house bone, like you're probably going to want to tweak what you're doing, but
Hmm.
we're not going to run a new defense. Our 3-4 is going to turn into a 5-2. I mean, that's basically, if you have built-in answers within what you're doing, you're going to give yourself at least a chance to line up.
But I appreciate that answer, because that's what I try to get across. Was trying to get across to coaches is just because you think a 6'2" is going to make it easier to stop, well, now you just changed all the reads and all the
Right.
techniques and everything that you just taught this kid. It's not going to be the same.
Right.
And that's why, like, you nailed it on the head. And that's what I tried to explain to. It's how you teach your players, because when they get on the field, it's not what I know, it's what they know. And if depending on how well you've teached it, or coached it, and taught it, it's going to make a world of difference whether those kids have success on the field.
Well, like my son plays safety, so like he's got to know if we have tripped, here's my adjustment. If we have empty, here's my adjustment. If we have no receiver, here's my adjustment. And if you can teach him his rules, at least he has an opportunity to succeed against whatever walks out that door.
Exactly. Um, well, with that, unless Coach Harris, thanks for joining us this whole time. If you got anything for Coach, um, Russ, we're just going to wrap it up and let Coach Simpson get on his way, because I really appreciate his time. Um, are you doing spring ball right now?
We're going to start actually Wednesday. We're going to have one practice this week and then we have graduation. So we won't
Okay.
practice again until the Monday. But yeah, we're getting into it.
Okay. Uh, no, sir. He said thanks, guys. So thank you for joining us. So with that, I think we'll thank you, Kenny, for coming on and doing this with us, or with me, and for the groups. And I think we covered almost all of it that
Sure.
everybody's gonna absolutely should absolutely appreciate and love. I really learned a lot. Um, I guess I'm gonna need to buy some more books, because that RPO that RPO thing and that menu thing with the drills kind of really hit home with me.
I
So
appreciate it, Coach. I
I
appreciate it. And
really
guys that are listening too, I know a lot of y'all have supported what we're doing, and I appreciate you, Coach. You know, coaches should support other coaches, I think. So I appreciate it.
that's what I've always tried to do, because you're until I get my book and get my stuff out, I'm not making any money at this. I'm just doing this because I love football so much, and I want every coach to succeed and have fun with it. And that with coaches having fun with it, it should go down to the players having fun
That's the
with
goal.
football. And that's the way I approach it every day. And this is kind of my outlet, since I'm not actually coaching on the field because of my new job. So I don't get an opportunity to actually coach. So this is my way of coaching and helping other coaches out. So and
Appreciate you, Coach.
and
Appreciate what you're
Kenny
doing. Yeah,
and Kenny's stuff is, like I said, it's not just gun T, guys. It works for every offense, because all of his stuff is very well organized. It's very detailed, and it's I want to use the word simple to understand, because he writes it as if he's sitting here right now talking talking to me. So his stuff is very easy to understand too. So like I said, our offenses, they're really, I don't think there's a similar thing other than the probably the run, which we call option, our double option and triple option plays. That's probably the only thing similar that we have between our two offenses. But I still have all this stuff, because it's great, and it helps think about. And not only that too, like if you're on the defensive side of the ball, it kind of looks at, you know, you're looking at a new offense. I'm like, okay, this is what he likes to do. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to do this. They're trying to do that. And I think that's, for me. Have you ever coached on the defensive side of the ball before you go?
what now?
Have you ever coached on the defensive side of the ball?
Oh, I was a DC. Absolutely. That was my first couple jobs. Yeah.
Okay. So I was say, when I finally got an opportunity to coach, I was as a coordinator, it was a D coordinator, and we were 9-1. And I think that's because I spent so much time on the offensive side of the ball for my
Yeah.
first 9 years. When I finally got that opportunity, I was really good at it. So,
Yeah. That's,
all
that's,
right.
yeah, it's good.
Thanks, Kenny. I'm gonna stop the share.